Morning, everybody. As we go to the Chitas of today, we're holding in the book of Shlach. The book of Numbers, Pasha Shlach. We're holding on chapter 15, verse number 8. Torah continues talking about the korbanos that were brought in when they come to Eretz Yisrael. V'chisasu ben baka oila. If you bring up an offering of a herd that is an oila, a zevach, or a scent offering or a feast offering, lefale neder, to fulfill a vow, a shlamim, or a peace offering, lavaya. V'hikir al ben bakar mincha selis. And you're going to bring upon the offering, and bring a meal offering, shleisha esreinim, 3/10 of an ephah, balu b'Hashem, which is mixed with oil, chatzi ahin, a half a hin of oil. Verse number 10, you have to also bring up with it a wine libation, a half a hin of wine as a libation. It's an offering that pleases God. Now she says, in general, when it says ishe reach nechayach, it goes not on the mincha, neither on the nesach. It goes on the carbon. This refers only to the grain offering. I'm sorry, it doesn't go in the libation. It goes on the either, because both of them, the meal offering and the sacrifice, are burnt on the mizbeach. So it goes on the offering of oil. And the wine is not a wine offering. It's not put on the fire. It's put on the base of the mizbeach. So that wouldn't make sense to call ishe as a burnt thing. Verse number 11, this is what you should do for the work for the bull. To the one lamb, or whether you're bringing a sheep, whether it's a lamb or a goat. Now she says, doesn't make a difference. Turn into changes between a goat and a sheep. They're called they're called a keves and a seb within the 12 months of their birth. A ram, is called the 13th month in the 13th month. So by a sheep, it goes by a male, it goes from the first 12 months. Then the 13th month is has a different name, and then from the 13th month on, it's called an ayel, a ram. Verse number 12, and according to the number of animals you offer up, you must present the grain offering and libation for each one, according to the number of animals. Now she says, in accordance to the number of animals that you bring as a sacrifice, so must you present the libation for each one of them. According to the number, meaning of animals, you shall bring the number of libations, because you have to do a libation for each and every animal. Verse number 13, every native of the land of Israel should offer up the firing offering. To pleasing to God must be done in this manner. If a convert resides with you, or amongst you for your future generation, and he'll bring an offering to God. You must offer it as you offer it up to you. You bring it up to a ger. Hakol chukachas. This rule applies to the entire community. To those that reside, the convert that resides with you, it's one law, one rule applies throughout your generation. Kachem kager, like you, like a convert, live Hashem before God. Now she says, Kamoisem ken ger, like you, like a convert, means just as you, so is the convert. Such is the style of Hebrew language, to repeat the word like in order to denote the complete similarity. Kigan Hashem ke'eretz Mitzrayim, like the garden of God is the land of Egypt, implying that Egypt is also like the garden, God's garden. Kamoni, kamecha, ka'ami, ka'amcha. We have this expression: I am like you, I'm like my people, I'm like your people. Verse number 16. Teira achas. We have one law. Mishpat echad. We have one ordinance. Yeh lachem. There's one law. Jewish people have one law, one Teira, one God, one land, one nation. Lager agar b'seichem, and also to the convert that lives amongst you. And that completes the Chumash for today. We now go to the Tanya of the day. We are holding in chapter 7 of Shar HaYichud Ve'emunah in the portal of faith and oneness of God. And here the Alter Rebbe goes into the concept of the in the aspect of this, the Tzimtzum. This was a great debate in the time of the Alter Rebbe between great people, sages, and in the wording of the Arizal. And the Alter Rebbe had a great debate with these sages. Ultimately, later on in history, everybody agreed with the Alter Rebbe, and the debate came to Baruch Hashem to an end. This was a fierce debate by the Jewish sages of the time. Mikan, in the light of what we said above, that God's knowledge is only one with him, God himself, or otherwise it would imply multiplicity in the one who is perfect unity. If God is the ultimate aspect of unity, that means, what means unity? Unity means that when you have differences of things, Chochmah, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, nevertheless, they're one in God. So that's the concept of what Chassidus says, that is Koydem HaTzimtzum, Achad Tzimtzum, the way there's the oneness in the world of Atzilus, and there's the oneness in the world of Bria. Yesh lahov in shigas mikzas chachamim beineim. It's possible to understand the error in certain scholars in their own eyes. May God forgive them, for even those who have erred unwillingly are needed of atonement. And ultimately, they all did come around. Took some time for them to come around to realize their mistake in the wording and in the teachings of the Arizal. They erred in misinterpreting in their study of the writing of the Arizal, the Chrein of Vracha, blessed memory. And they understood when the Arizal said Tzimtzum, they took it into it meaning literally. That when they said God separated from the world, the God's not in the world. Chas v'shalom. And that's what he said. That Arizal said so. That Arizal said that once it was Tzimtzum, to God there's a difference between before Tzimtzum and after Tzimtzum. Chas v'shalom. And Alter Rebbe fought against this. That the whole concept of Arizal of Tzimtzum is the way we look at the thing, not the way God looks at it. So in the Raida Arizal was stated that in the beginning, before creation, the infinite light of God filled all space. This is the Arizal. It's all based on the Arizal, teachings of the Arizal. And there's no room for creation in the finite world. For so much as the worlds are by definition finite, where divine light is infinite, there's no room within the infinite for finite. How then did the finite world come into being? So the Arizal said through the doctrine of Tzimtzum, that the Ein Sof departed, so to say, created a black hole, meaning it ceased to reveal, so that the infinite had no longer a state of revelation. And all that remained revealed was the power of the finitude. This power does allow to creation in the finitude world. So the scholars, in their own eyes, misunderstood this concealment to mean literally departure of God, chas v'shalom. That the world, God departed chas v'shalom from this physical world. That's the simple way they learned Arizal. HaKadosh Baruch Hu silik es atzmai. They learned Arizal meant that so to say, God removed himself, umahusay, in his essence, chas v'shalom, God forbid, ma'olam hazeh, for this world. That's what they learned Arizal. That he literally removed his presence rather than he concealed it. They said, sure, God is still here. He didn't disappear. He just looks from above. Hashgacha pratis, hakol yitzurim. The Eibush looks from above. He looks from above, but he's not here. The Eibush, that Arizal says that the Eibush left the world. He made a space for the world, and God is infinite, and the world is finite, and the two opposites, and these two things can't come together. And God forbid, but not that God is not watching. God is watching. God is watching from above. And all created beings, which are in the heavens above and the earth below, and he's looking. Thus they envisioned God as a king who sits on his palace. Although he extends beyond its confines, the king himself is not found there. In the same way, so too that said God gazes from above on all created beings, which are found, heaven forbid, outside his palace. So that's the way they learned Arizal. So the Alter Rebbe fought against this. As I told you, this was a big debate between the Alter Rebbe and the Gra. And this ultimately came to physical blows, so to say. And ultimately, this is one reason that Alter Rebbe went to prison for this debate. I mean, they had to mix the government in and create, evil lashon hara. But it was all based on this concept. Now, apart from the fact that it's altogether impossible, it's impossible. If you know what God is, then you cannot say God is separate himself. It's impossible, because then the world wouldn't be. But apply the doctrine of Tzimtzum literally, Tzimtzum k'pshutei. That's the expression in that terminology in this fight. Tzimtzum k'pshutei or Tzimtzum shalei k'pshutei. Do we take Tzimtzum to the literal sense, or do we take Tzimtzum to the figurative sense that the Eibishter, so to say, hid himself? Can God hide himself from himself? Can't hide himself from himself. He hide himself from somebody else, but God cannot hide himself from himself, and everything really is part of God. So how can he hide himself from himself? So everything is God. So how easy he hide himself? So therefore, they took it. They said no. That the Arizal meant Tzimtzum K'pshutei, and the Eibishter is out of this world. God is above. He's looking from above. So they took it's. So the Alter Rebbe said it's impossible to take the Arizal and to say that he meant it literally, in a literal sense, for that would be for an instance of corporal phenomena to the Holy One, blessed be He. That would be set apart from them by infinite myriads of separation. So then we put God into a logical kind of concept, and you're putting God into a logic, and you cannot do that. God his thoughts is above our thoughts, his comprehension is above our comprehension, his wisdom is above our wisdom. So one who's subject to the characteristics of physical body can be said to undergo actual tzimtzum. Tzimtzum can be said on a human being, that a human being is with tzimtzum himself, contracts himself. Every person can contract himself in something and look from above, and look at it, be not objective. That's an objective opinion, that I separate myself from the situation and I'm objective. That's the rule of a judge. A judge needs to be objective. He needs to hear it, not see it. So because he needs to be objective, he needs to be out of the situation. If he's part of the situation, he's not. He cannot be a judge. He becomes a witness. So in a human being, you can say that this concept. And to depart, previously he was here and now he's not. It goes without saying that this cannot be ascribed to God. You cannot say that on God. Chas v'shalom, who is infinitely removed from the phenomenal corporality, apart from all above. And even greater than this, they also don't speak wisely. They truthfully, the Alter Rebbe said, and that's why ultimately they all came around, because that they were speaking out of not knowledge. They were simply speaking from the heart. They were not speaking from the truth, because every Jew has emunah. And they also have emunah. Even though they were great sages and they had great understanding and comprehension, they ultimately all have emunah. They all have emunah Hashem. These great people had simple faith, like a regular Jew who has simple faith. And the Holy One blessing knows all created beings in this lower world and exercises providence. And they believe in Hashgacha Pratis. So if they believe in Hashgacha Pratis, that God is sitting right over here. Nitza, they believe in Shulchan Aruch, Hashem Nitzav Olav. The Eibishter is standing upon him. So what do you mean that God is separated? You say that God is standing atop you. That's where you hear yarmulke. So they all wore yarmulkes, these great Jews, because they believe that the Eibishter is standing on top of them. So they really didn't even mean what they said, that God separated himself. How can you say God said, "Don't, why are you wearing a kippah if God separated himself from the world?" So it's just ridiculous. And thus they themselves admit God's knowledge and broad extent to the physical world. God's right standing on top of them. Some preface his knowledge of them does not add plurality or innovation to him or something special. Because they really understand that that God knows everything for himself. Not that God has to stand upon him and look upon him. God someplace and he has to look upon him. Everybody believes that we come from God and God is within us, and everything God knows because it knows himself. And they have that emunah just like anybody else has that emunah. So were God's knowledge of created being not come from knowing himself, then it would be correct to say that his knowledge adds plurality and innovation to him. Previously, he did not know them, and now he does. But even these great people know that is not the point, that God knows us like we know somebody else. Nobody believes that. However, since plurality and innovation cannot possibly apply to God, he must preface known them through the knowledge of himself. So even these great people understood that there's no concept of tzimtzum to God. Because then that would be like God is a human being, and he knows another human being, like, oh, something's out. Oh, you mean there's somebody like that? Something's happening. Oh, I just read the news. Oh, I just saw it. I didn't know it before. Now I know it. That's how God knows the world. Chas v'shalom. God forbid. And these great people understood that too. So if they understood that too, so then how can they say that Arizal says tzimtzum k'pshutei? That's the opposite of what everybody believes, that the Eibishter doesn't know something that's happening in the world, or even to myself. God doesn't know me by saying, oh, wow, there's Zalman Bukit in the world. I didn't know about it before. Now I know about it. Oh, until Zalman Bukit screamed something or said something, I didn't know that he was there. That is not the way anybody believes in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Eibishter knows me because I'm part of him. And these great tzaddikim knew the same thing. This is not a great knowledge. And we all are some believers, the sons of believers. So therefore, ultimately, they agree the same thing. That the essence being in his knowledge are all one. By the Eibush, it's all one, and that's it. So and that's why they didn't make a mistake in the Arizal. They made a mistake in themselves. So they made a mistake, not the Arizal. Don't blame the Arizal. You can argue on the Arizal. They made a mistake on themselves. Because they themselves contradict themselves. So the religious Jews and the great scholars, and they believe in Hashgacha Pratis, that Geibishter is upon them and is watching them. So God's watching them, so to say, from above. God is right there. He understands exactly what's happening for himself. So that thus the essence being is in his knowledge, create all as one. So since God's knowledge and providence extend to this world, and they believe that, and since his knowledge is one with him, it follows that God himself is found within the physical world. So unlike the king who sits in his palace and gazes upon its walls, the king himself is found where his providence and knowledge are found. True enough, that this is only that it's through divine service that this world may transform into a palace in which God's revealed. Nevertheless, God is present in the lowly corporal world, which feels itself as exists independently of him to the same degree as he's present within the higher spiritual world. And that's what it's called, is written, Tikkun Arizal. In the less asar ponim minei, that there's no place devoid of him. Loi ba'almin, not in the upper worlds, but loi b'tatoyin, bi'iloi, not in the upper world, loi b'tatoyin, not in the lower worlds. God is everywhere. There's no place void of him. God forbid. Thus, we find explicitly in Tikkun Zohar that God himself is found within the low worlds as he found in the upper worlds. By God, there's no upper, lower. There's no concept. Everything is him. Everything comes from him. Everything exists through him. Everything is there because of him. And God is here as he's in the upper worlds. But we also find the Zohar in the Raya Mehem, the portion of Pinchas. Iu toughest bekulei, they're able to grasp all. The less man, the toughest bay, but nobody can grasp him. Iu Seviv Kalam, he encompasses all the world. Less man than nothing, and no one goes out from his domain. By God, this whole world, that's the whole thing on Shabbos, a public domain and a private domain. By God, the whole world is a private domain. There's no public, there's no private. It's all private. A Yid makes a public domain into a private domain. We take ultimately in the physical world, now we live in a physical world. By us, there's a public domain and a private domain. And therefore, there's different laws on Shabbos between a public domain and a private domain. By God, there's no public domain and a private domain. It's all God's domain. It's all Reshus HaYachid. It's all a private domain. God fills the world. He binds and unites a kind to kind, upper and lower. And there's no closeness in the four elements which this corporal world is comprised of, only except through God. When he is within them, there's a total oneness, even though there's four levels of the world: fire, water, earth, and air. These are four different dimensions, which we brought down in the Zohar in the beginning of the Tanya. But by the Eibishter, all these four dimensions are all one. It's only through his power that all these four inherited, contradicting elements are bound together. Atkan l'shayne in the Raya Mehemna in Porshapin. Rotzalema. And the Raya Mehemna, the Zohar wants to tell us, the less asar ponim, the less man the toughest be. Means that there's no one even amongst the supernal intelligence. There's no, in the corporal creatures of the high spiritual worlds whose apprehension of divine is superhuman, who can grasp by the means of his intellect the essence and being of the Holy One, blessed be He, which Tikkunim has brought down in Tikkunim, in the Zohar, Stima de Kostimoin. God is hidden of all spiritual worlds himself. He's hidden of the hidden. So you say, you can't say, oh, God is in the upper worlds, but he's not in the lower worlds. God is hidden from the upper worlds as he's hidden from the lower worlds. There's no difference. In the concept of hiddenness, just like this lower world can't comprehend God, the upper worlds can't comprehend. Don't we say that? We say, no thought, no thought. Not the lower thought, not the malach can comprehend God, not the neshamis l'mayla can comprehend God. Nobody ultimate can comprehend God. The point being made here is that God cannot be grasped even by the heavenly thoughts process with the hidden worlds. There is, however, yet another concept inherent in the word grasp, tfisa, the ability to adhere and thereby affect a change. Thus, the fact that one I can grasp, when you grasp something, so when you say you can't grasp God, the Zohar means to say that you can't change anything in God. If you grasp something, then you can make a change in it. You grasp it. God also means nothing can affect him. You can't affect God. Even though we do, in a way, with our wisdom, with the Eibishter gives us the capability to grasp him, but that's only in the Chachma, the way it comes down to Chachma. But ultimately, to grasp the Eibishter, we also know we cannot grasp God. When a person makes something, he's inadvertently can be grasped by the object of his creation. He will undergo changes in accordance with the particular demand of the object which he's producing. In the case of God, however, his creation of all existence beings, it causes no change in him whatsoever. Why? Because they do not hold him, so to speak, in their grasp. From this point of view, the creation of the lower worlds is even more telling. For their creation requires a great degree of tzimtzum and enclothement. Nevertheless, they cause absolutely no change in him. So even though God is mitzamtzim himself, and he's mitzamtzim himself, and he's mitzamtzim himself, he contracts himself, and contracts himself, and contracts himself, but ultimately they cannot grasp even that contraction. They do not grasp him. As the Alter Rebbe says, "Va'af betachtonim," and even in the lower worlds, "Af agavdi malakolam," even though, as the Zohar says, or the Arizal explains, that the Eibishter permeates the world. God comes into this world. So you might say, the way God comes into this world, maybe I can grab him. Maybe I can grasp him. animates them, life force suited to each individual created being in particular. So God comes into every creation. So you might say, I can grasp him. For this investment is not like a soul of man that's enclosed in a body. Ultimately, in some extent, it's influenced by the body and it's changed, involving the body, and it feels its pain of the body. Chaos, akridus, from the cold, it's too hot, it's too cold. For the heat of fire, the Frierdiker Rebbe would say, a small hole in the body is a big hole in the soul. It affects the soul, because right now the soul cannot do what it wants to do in the world, so it has ultimately affected the soul in a certain kind of level. The Holy One, blessed be He, however, even though God comes within the world and the infinite comes within the finite and the finite is infinite, nevertheless, the Eibush is not affected by the world at all. From summer to winter, from day and night. Tilsiv, as the Pasuk says it openly. Darkness does not obscure you. So the God doesn't go to sleep at night. The Eibush doesn't go to sleep. Oh, nighttime time sleep. There's no difference, God, night and day. And the nighttime illuminates like the day. Why? For he's not grasping. The world does not grasp him. Even though he fills them, he's not. Then the world is not grasped. He's not grasped by the world. The world is not taken. Doesn't take God, so to say, like the neshama is taken by the body. Neshama shot to be. The soul you put in me becomes part of me. It's my character. It becomes my part of my existence. My soul works through my character, etc. Eibishter, as he works for the world, he's above the world at the same time. And that's something hard for us to comprehend. But we chas shalom shouldn't take God in human kinds of terms, even though we use human terminology, God forbid, to make it human terminology. You got to realize those two concepts. And we have to be careful. That's why the sages never wanted to use human terminology. That's why there was the big machlekes with the Rambam. And that's what the Alter Rebbe said, I think, yesterday or the day before, that the Kabbalah agrees with the Rambam, even though there were great sages that basically don't give God a human terminology, because humans are going to take it wrong. People are going to take it wrong. They're also using terminology for God. Now we'll make God human, which the world did that. And chas shalom, a Jew is not allowed to do that. So even though a Jew uses human terminology, we just said in the Pasha, that God has a pleasing smell. That's human terminology. That's a human term. That is a pleasing smell. That Moshe Eibush smells. He's pleased. He's unpleased. These are all human terminologies. So God forbid to take these human terminologies, which we know that Moshe, the Gemara says, Moshe Rabbeinu asked God, why are you using terminologies? And the Eibush to answer, if a person wants to come and make a mistake, let him come and make a mistake. I don't want to take away the freedom from humans to make chas v'shalom avodah zarah, to take the Torah chas v'shalom and make it say, oh, God is human. So God uses human terminology. So therefore, God is human, and God is human, and ultimately, a lot of the world turned God into a human being. Chas v'shalom. But a Yid is smarter than that, hopefully, and therefore the Rambam and Kabbalah felt that humans are smarter than that, and they can comprehend that that the Eibishter uses human terminology, as Rashi says, lishka sa'izin, that God didn't want that wisdom of godliness would be so totally abstract, but the Eibishter wanted that every person should have a comprehension of godliness, but he should come to the conclusion that all the comprehension of godliness that he has is not God, because God is above my comprehension. And every comprehension of God is what I can understand. And what God, so to say, humbled himself, so to say, to come into the capability that Zalman Bukha should be able to understand him to the best of my capability. And even myself, I know my capability, even the many other humans in this world that have even a greater capacity of godliness than I have. And the great tzaddikim in the world that have even a greater capacity of knowledge of godliness than I will ever have. So what am I in comparison to God? Self-understood, I'm nothing. If I'm nothing in comparison to other humans in the world, but that's not my job. My job is to have a comprehension of God to my capacity. I'm not trying here to do somebody else's capacity. And every person needs to try to find godliness in their life through Torah and through mitzvahs to their capability. But at the same moment, to realize that my thought is not God's thought, and God's wisdom is not my wisdom, and I don't grasp God at all. But as the Torah says, that you do grasp God when you do a mitzvah, because even though you don't see it, that is the chachma and the wisdom of God, the will of God, and so to the Torah is the chachma and the will of God. So in a way, I do grasp it, even though I don't grasp it in a physical way. I grasp it in a more spiritual, ethereal way. Okay, beautiful part of Tanya. Something that we all need to, this Shari Yichud Emunah is one of the beautiful parts of Tanya that everybody should learn over and over and over again. And I hope and I pray that, Baruch Hashem, we have been learning this already 3-4 years, that slowly this is creeping into our brains, into our thoughts, to start thinking different in our Emunas Hashem and our belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as we learn these words and as we comprehend it, every person to their understanding, that they are slowly realizing and transforming their seichel into a certain kind of a way, a certain kind of a shift in my mind, how I comprehend my Emunas Hashem. Because Emunas Hashem is ever ending, and we're going to continue to grow in Emunas Hashem day to day, and that it will continue to grow every person's belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Today is the 23rd day of the month, my dear friends. It's chapter 108 to chapter 112. If you do those 5 chapters, you've done the chitas of the day. The Rebbe writes in the Yom Yom of today, in the 23rd day of Sivan, in reply to Yechidus in the year 1874. This is the Frierdiker Rebbe's writing. He's writing about the Rebbe Marash, his grandfather. My grandfather said to my father, the Rebbe Rashab, who was the Frierdiker Rebbe's father, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is called the animal soul. Not because it's necessarily brutal, not because it's a brutal animal. At times it may be a fox. It's not always an ox, a goring animal. It could be a fox, cunning beast. Great wisdom is needed to perceive his mechanisms. You know, we need to know what is the sly fox. And the Torah, a fox is a sly animal. At other times, it's clothed in the garbs of an earnest, straightforward, humble tzaddik. We can sometimes have the tzaddik, the animal soul is a tzaddik. He's a humble, he's very pious, possessing fine trait characters. We got to be careful with this animal soul. The animal soul manifests ourselves in each person according to the individual character. One person may suddenly experience a powerful longing to study Chassidus or to meditate deeply on some concept of Chassidus. A person can suddenly have a feeling he needs to have a spiritual moment. This truth is, however, nothing more than your Yetzer Hara could be. The counsel of your animal soul, to prevent him from engaging in the avodah of davening. So suddenly he has to daven. Torah wants him to daven. It's time to the minyan. Oh, I'm going to sit and learn Chassidus. That's not the time. You should realize that moment of wanting to sit and meditate is not your time. It's not the right time. And therefore, where's it coming from? It's coming from your animal soul. Similar davening or similar activity, right? Suddenly, a Jew asked me to do him a favor. Oh, I'm in the middle of my meditation. I'm in the middle of the avodah of my meditation. I cannot leave the spiritual world. Take this a general principle and remember it always. Any matter that is affected towards or actually leads to active avodah and is confronted with opposition of any sort. So when you're supposed to do something and suddenly you have an opposition to it, whether a negative opposition or even a spiritual opposition, even the most noble and that opposing is coming for your animal soul. Even though it's coming from the most noble part of your side, realize that this is not so noble, It is all from your nefesh habahamis. The Frierdiker Rebbe says, my father concluded, the Rebbe Rashab concluded, until then I had not known that there can be a pious animal soul. I never imagined a pious animal soul. I always thought animal soul was this bad guy, this terrible entity. Oh, it wants me to sin. No, your animal soul can garb itself in a tzaddik. Oh, I'm pious. I want to do there's more important things to do. Let alone a Chassidic animal soul. I never knew that there could be a Chassidic animal soul. He garbs himself in the garbs of Chassidus. Oh, I need to learn Chassidus. I'm learning Chassidut. Oh, but you need to daven with the minyan. No, I'm learning Chassidut. I'm learning Kabbalah. I'm learning godly stuff. Oy vey vey. That's your animal soul. Now everybody needs to know the avodah that he's supposed to do. And if you have an avodah you're supposed to do, at that moment, that avodah, that avodah means service of God, whether it's davening, helping somebody, doing the right thing, doing a mitzvah right now. That's the avodah you need to do. That I would always tell the students that would go out and do mivtzoyim and say, oh, but I need no, there's a time to learn, and there's a time to go out and get a Jew to put on tefillin. And that's your avodah. And go and do it, b'simcha b'tuv leivav, go and do it with great joy, because that's the avodah of the moment, and the learning will come after. And everybody needs to know that what comes from your godly soul and what comes from your animal soul. Beautiful, one of the classics of Yom in that book. Okay, my dear friends, I invite you all at 10 a.m., an hour and a half. We're going to learn a beautiful sikh of the Rebbe on the portion of the week. You can come to Chabad, or come on Zoom. And Mitchell, we'll see you all tomorrow, 8 o'clock. We'll continue to learn the chitas of the day.